So when you make scrapes, you got to make it the best. And so I don't care what branch is there. You just bring branches with
Let's
you.
do it. Let's
You know.
let's break down a scrape. Why don't you go for it?
Okay. So let's first break down what everyone makes in terms of scrapes, the mistakes that they make. I
Okay.
think this is important. So most people make scrapes too high. A deer is not that tall. Your
Mm-hmm.
scrape at its height should be under 5.5 feet,
Yeah.
usually 4.5 to 5 feet. I think the back of a deer is what, 3.5 feet off the ground. So
Probably.
then his head gets to like 4. And so they make it for the buck. And they think about, oh, I want the buck to be in the scrape. Well, a buck isn't going to hit a scrape if none of the does can reach it,
Right.
or the little fawns. You're going to want all the deer to do this because most people's mindset with scrapes are so wrong. They use the scrapes, they think the scrape has to do with the rut. And it is just a complete myth and a lie. Deer use scrapes all year long. I
Mm-hmm.
have deer clearing out 6 inches of snow working a scrape in January. And they
Mm-hmm.
use this as a form of communication because deer, if you look at the way a deer has been designed, they have scent glands everywhere. They have preorbital gland scents, they have salivary glands, they have what's the one on their forehead? It's I can't. It's anyway. It's a forehead
Jeremy?
gland. They
Yeah,
have
forehead
they
gland.
have
They've got interdigital glands in their feet, in
yeah,
the hoofs.
interdigital glands. They have anal glands.
Mhm.
I mean, they have all this. Why do you think dogs go up and sniff each other's butts?
Yeah.
And so the deer have all of these different glands. So their primary source of communication is scent.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever they're dealing with like scrapes and all of these things, they're going and seeing who's around. They're coming in. They want to see, is there a new buck in the area? A new doe? And they're just communicating. And they do this all summer long. And we can dive into summer scrapes versus fall scrapes. They're very different.
Keep it October for now. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, like a summer scrape, you do not make them the same because they have velvet that they're trying to protect. So if you use a big hardy oak branch and they get up there and it's hitting their antlers, they're not going to like it.
Yeah.
So in the summer, I like to do like single individual branches that they can just kind of get up and get their preorbital glands into, their forehead glands.
Yeah.
You'll see them lick the branch to get their salivary glands into it, and they're way more delicate in the summer. Now, come fall, the big oak branch. I mean, they love the antlers up in the branches, the noise it's making, but they're able to get all that scent all over it. And then another thing with scrapes that most people do is they don't clear the ground. I literally take a weed eater and I make a bare dirt. It's got to be bare dirt.
Yep.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I pull out all the roots, I weed eat it till it's bare dirt. And then around the scrape, you want it to be where they can walk 360 degrees around it. If it's right up next to it, something else, they can't get under it, they feel confined.
Yep.
And so you want it to be kind of overhanging. And how you do this is you can literally cut branches and zip tie them. And then if it's too high, you just add more branch weight until zip tie pieces of tree, whatever, until it gets to that 4.5 to 5 foot range. And then if it's too low, then you can cut branches until it rises up, and you can adjust the height of it by doing it like that with zip ties.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, what you want to be able to do is after you get the height right and you get the right branches, you make sure you have vertical branches because deer like the vertical branches to be able to get into their preorbital glands. Yep. And so if they can't get into their preorbital glands, then it's kind of hard when the branch is at a horizontal line because they can't really get their eye into it. And so same thing with their salivary glands. They like it whenever they can get the branches like deep into their mouth. You'll see them kind of like stick it in there. And so having a good vertical branch, at least one, is good. And you could just literally break it in half, but don't break it all the way, and they'll protect that branch. They really will. So the young ones might break it off, but keep an eye on it. And then also on top of that is going back to the bare dirt side of it.
Real quick.
After you do the
real quick, Josh, before you move on from like the branch part of it, what do you think of vines? We've used a lot of vines, and as I'm listening to you talk, maybe it is more in line with what you're saying from like a summer standpoint, but in my case here, I leave the same ones year round, and I think I've had pretty good success on it. What do you think of the vines?
Vines are awesome if you find the right vine.
Right.
So the problem that you're going to have with vines is they break. And so once you cut them,
interesting. That's the problem I was having with branches. That's why I moved.
Oh, really?
Well, because I always wanted the perfect height on the branch, and I would I would break it halfway and try to get it perfect. But then after a few weeks, few months, they die even more, and then they start to droop and stuff. Started getting really annoyed with that. So that's why I moved to vines.
Oh yeah, I do both. So I'll run a vine in the branch. I
Mm.
don't have that problem because I zip tie so much of the tree.
I've seen
So
yours. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so they're kind of zip tied in there. So and if they break it and I see it on camera and they're not using it anymore, I'll just go in and
Fix it.
redo it,
Yeah.
But the vines work really, really well.
Cool.
But you can't make them too big. I think what do you think? Maybe 3/4 of an inch diameter
Yeah.
is about the best.
Yep.
If they're too big, they don't use them. If they're too small, they break.
Yeah.
And so if you can find the right vine and have that available, then it works really, really well. I've had great success with that. I
Agreed. Cool.
haven't had great success with the ropes.
Me neither.
A lot of guys do though.
I hear it. I'm like,
tried.
I've tried them, dude. I can't get them to touch them. I don't know.
I know. I've tried it. I have them hit it from time to time, but it's the vines
Here's
and
here's a
the
great
branches are
example,
better.
Josh. In Illinois, on that farm that we bought, there was an old rope. It was an old, like, raggedy. It had been there forever, and I think there was remnants of a scrape. There were, okay, this used to be a scrape, but I didn't like where it was. So we had a spot just up the hill, 50 yards from where it was to where I wanted it to be. We took that rope, cut it off the branch that it was on, took it up, and I hung it from a vine. So this branch was way up. I tied a vine off onto it with parachute cord, and then I tied the rope at the end of it. It's kind of like the end piece there. They freaking just didn't care, didn't like it, didn't touch it. They would look at it from a distance a whole year. I left it there the entire year, and they just never really did anything with it. So this past year, we went in and I just cut off the rope part of it, tied on a small section of vine on it, and they're on it like clockwork.
I love that. Yeah, and so again, people have used. I've seen mature deer hit ropes, and so I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm doing something that's not working with the rope
Yeah,
because I've tried them because it would be super convenient to have a truck full of rope and just
no
throw it out
doubt.
there.
Yeah,
But it's because trying to find vines and doing all that things. The problem is when I make scrapes, I do about 120 scrapes a year. Is how
whoa,
many scrapes I make.
wow,
So for me with vines and all this, I can find an oak branch anywhere, so I just end up doing that. But the vines, if I've got a real primo spot that I love, the vine is
it's the
100%
move,
right.
huh? Cool.
And but I want to finish. I want to finish the perfect scrape.
Do it.
So to recap, so then we can kind of summarize this. Obviously, you want the scrape between the branches to being between 4.5 to 5 feet. They could go as low as 4, but you don't want to get too low. And then bare dirt. And then if you're in weedy stuff, take the weed eater and weed eat around it as well. So it's all nice and flat. And then the scrape itself is bare.
Yeah.
Then you have to take a rake, not a leaf rake, a garden rake, hard
Like a
steel
like a
teeth.
rock rake is what you call it.
Yeah, and you freaking scrape that ground and get that thing and then stomp on it, break up the clumps, get it to where it's fluffy.
Yeah.
Then you could take a leaf rake and make it fluffy. It needs to be fluffy because it needs to have about
It needs to be
about
fluffy.
it needs to be fluffy because you need about I would say a little over almost a half inch of
Fluff.
dirt. And
Yeah.
the reason that is it's important because they have a digital gland in their hoof. They need to be able to press into the fluffy dirt or the dirt to be able to get the scent of their interdigital gland into that scrape. Because if you ever watch a buck make a scrape and you see him over there, if you go over there after that, which I wouldn't recommend, you're going to screw up your hunt, but if you do, you will see a single footprint right in the middle of that scrape. It's kind of their stamp. It's kind of cool how they do that. And so they put that in there and that digital gland. So this is amazing about deer. And I want to come back to the scrape, but we're talking about interdigital gland. So when a deer blows at you, it stomps its foot.
Yeah.
You know why it does that?
To put the gland down.
Yeah, because they're excreting a different smell when they stomp versus when they do a scrape. And so they did this study in humans actually, which is really, really cool. So they took the smell of sweat and they let people smell the sweat, and then they measured their response in their body. And so they took a person that was sweating from skydiving. And so a fear was induced whenever they were sweating, and the person smelled that and they started feeling anxiety and a fear response.
Oh.
Then they took a person that was, I think I could get this part wrong, but I'm pretty sure they were having sex. And
let me just get some of that real quick. Okay.
And then the person started feeling like aroused or whatever the case is just by the smell.
Interesting.
But the person themselves didn't notice the difference. But you think about that, and then you think about the level of smell that a deer has.
Yeah.
They can smell all the difference. and cognitively understand what it means. So when there's a fear response and the deer stomps its hoof, that scent is going to be different than a normal one.
So here, I know we're all over the place here. This is in a good way. Do you think they can pick up on human scent the same way that humans can, in the sense that if you're in there farming and that's truly your attitude, do you think they can smell that and they're less bothered by that than if you're in there hunting?
I don't know. Other than there's an old Indians when the old Indians used to say when they would go hunt, they're like, I'm just going to go watch birds.
Yeah.
I'm not actually killing anything. I'm just going and observing. Right. And you see them do that. And it's kind of interesting because their mindset was that there was an energy field that the deer could sense when you're hunting them.
For sure.
And you see this with women. A lot of women can get away with a lot more in the woods than a man can. And I've seen this firsthand many times with Sarah. When she was pregnant, she could literally just freaking crawl up to almost anything. It was insane. I was watching her, and then I mean, it was crazy, like how close she could get. And I was like, that's weird. And I thought that was kind of insane to think of, but I definitely do believe that. Okay. But let's put a pin in the scrape and we can move on.
Interdigital. Yep. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. And then we'll finish the scrape and then we can talk about the danger aspect of it.
Cool.
So when you get it all, the ground's fluffed up, it's bare, it's all this, right height, all that. Then pee in the scrape, like you as a man, whatever, pee in the scrape, or always have a gallon of water.
Yeah.
It'll be very important that you bring water because water and moisture hold scent. Mm-hmm. So I put maybe about 8 to 9 ounces of water in the scrape, and I kind of fluff it up a little bit to where it's damp, because that will make a huge difference. A lot of guys miss this step. And then in the actual branch itself, I do use my own product, which is the Secret Scrape by Bowmar Archery. And I don't even know if we have some in stock. If we do, you guys should definitely pick some up.
Sure, cool.
Because I don't even know if we're going to remake it or not.
That's not the stuff that it was like a family recipe. Is that the same stuff you told us about last time? Oh, it is. Cool.
Yeah. So that's like a grandpa's secret recipe. That's why it's called the Secret Scrape, which is cool. And so it's fun. So that works. I do not. Oh my God. Please, God, listen to me, guys. When you do not put pee in the branches.
Oh yeah, dude.
So many guys do estrus in the tree.
Oh yeah.
It's like, I'm like, guys, what are you doing? Don't do that.
That's crazy,
but nothing
man.
In there over that.
I think the water or the moisture in the scrape is a big one, because we've been talking about that all year. Prior to getting rain last week, like typically we start to see some pretty good scrape activity, especially when they shed out in early September through that mid-September period. And like it was dead. Like we had better scrape activity in the summer than we had almost the entire month of September, because there was no moisture in the ground.
Yeah.
Like they just completely were avoiding them.
Yeah. And so that's important to add that in there. So I do 2 things whenever I make scrapes. I have a gallon jug that I drink nonstop while I'm doing scrapes so I can pee in every scrape. It is very hard because a deer only pees like 6 to 8 ounces. So we hold like a lot of pee. So you got to pee a little bit and pull it back and stop it.
It's hard to shut it off.
No, you don't. You cut it off just to hold some for the next one?
Yeah, you
cut it off and that's discipline.
You can't give them all the goods.
So you think that urine is important?
I do, yeah, because after 20 minutes, the human aspect of it's gone. So then the aroma and the urea or whatever it is,
the ammonia,
that they're smelling, that is great. I mean, they don't know the difference. I mean,
do you think it bothers them if they're to be the first? So like I've seen guys with a jug. I know you're a big advocate of that, of water and stuff.
Sure.
And I've always kind of felt like I build them so far in advance that I'm like, it's going to rain, like in the next couple of days here type of thing, which essentially takes care of that. Yes. Or no?
Repeat that question. I'm sorry, I missed it.
I said, so if I don't do the gallon, but then it rains 2 or 3 days later, like it is the same thing, right? Like it essentially accomplishes that.
Yeah, but you got to think with compression, the water will then flatten that ground out. And so you got to keep that in mind. If it rains really hard and the deer don't rework that scrape, you're going to need to go rework that scrape, because then there won't be that layer of fluff there that is important for them to get that interdigital gland to be able to press into that. And so normally once you get a scrape established, the deer will rework it up. But if it's a new scrape that they're not used to communicating with and using, you're going to have to go in and redo that. And the other time you'll have to redo it is if once the leaves start dying and falling off the branch, it'll slowly rise out of the range that they like. So your 4.5 foot scrape is now at 6 feet. And you're like, why'd the deer stop using it? And that's where having a vine is actually really important, right? Because if the branch rises, that vine can still be, that vine can go down to 3 feet. And now that vine is still in the range that is necessary for them to be able to interact with.
Yeah.
But yeah, that roughing the ground up and then getting it nice and airy in there and then having some moisture in there is going to be helpful. The best time to make scrapes actually is, maybe the post day of a moderate rain, because then the moisture's already in the ground. You don't have to do the extra steps.
Sure. Yep. But the urine is important, huh? I guess, yeah, I've always done it just as like hey, who knows, but it's not hurting anything. But yeah, I can see that it could help too.
And I've done both urine and not urine. I mean, sometimes I don't have any urine in me. If I'm doing 50, 60 scrapes or something like that,
that's a lot of urine.
That's a lot of urine. Even for Josh Bowmar, that's a lot of urine.
It's a lot. And I try to put 4 or 5 ounces, shut the valve off.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough.
You're like, babe, time me. I got to get 6 ounces here. Cut it off. Cut it off.
Cut it off. If I get bladder cancer, it's because of this.
That's very possible.
Give me the zip ties.
So with that, where were we going with this?
I don't know. Something about scrapes.
Well, you were saying you were saying that it's got to be, if you don't fluff it and do the moisture and you just get rain, then you could actually create like more of like a harder surface there that they're not going to. You
walk past Jeremy's like, has this scrape been fluffed? I don't think the scrape's been fluffed. Get the fluffer over here. Somebody's got to fluff this scrape.
Yeah, exactly. Once you get the scrape established, they'll come back and rework it just fine. But it's like getting that first initial establishment is kind of difficult. Yeah. So scrape location is super important. If you put it in the middle of nowhere where there's no deer, well, then you're not going to have any action no matter how good the scrape is.
Yeah.
So the woodsmanship goes in back into it. You want it to be in transitioned areas. Edge of fields is fine. And another thing people make mistakes is they cut down all the other scrapes in the area, so they only use theirs.
Yeah.
Terrible idea. Do not do that, because a lot of people have this mindset that they're only going to hit one of these scrapes. I have literally watched a mature buck, a 5-year-old deer, hit 4 scrapes in the same field.
Yeah.
And it was like scrape, 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 scrape. And the problem is it's a preference thing, right?
Yeah.
He may have had an interaction with one of those scrapes that's a positive situation for him. For example, like say you go to a bar and you have a seat at the bar that you picked a chick up from once.
Yeah.
It kind of has a sense of like, oh, that's a good seat. I like that seat. Now someone goes and rips that seat out. And you're like, well, there's other seats. It's fine. I like this one because from a deer's perspective, it was this exact height. It was this exact species of tree. It had the fluffiest ground, whatever you want to say. There's a preference to it that he enjoyed from that. That doesn't mean that he's not going to go to the other scrapes. And so guys do this all the time. And I'm like, you guys are making a huge mistake because you just don't know which one he likes the most. And if your scrape isn't the king in the area, then why is that? So what I've done in the past, which I don't know if it's conclusively a good idea or a bad idea, but it is something that you can do, is you find a scrape that they absolutely love, but you can't hunt it, and he doesn't come over to your scrape. I have taken and cut that scrape, those branches, and then zip tied those into my scrape.
Same.
I have done that. And so again, each situation is so unique and different. So you got to remember, exceptions don't make the rules.
Right.
And so everyone will be able to, everything I say, there's going to be a counter, very rare exception that's like, yeah. And so that's where the rule is, don't cut any scrapes down. But the exception would be they're not hitting your scrape at all, and they keep hitting this other scrape, and it's in a terrible spot, you can't get to it. Then you could take that scrape branch and then put it onto a scrape that's better, and you should get good response.
And especially when like everything we're talking about here, and people listening to this get it too, is like we're talking about observation data, which automatically has some bias involved, right? There are things that we can see, and there's things that we can't see that are happening at any given time out there in the woods. And so we're making conclusions and plans and strategies based on the observation data we have and what we can see, but there's absolutely things that are happening out there that could support this or oppose it that we don't see, that are happening in the woods at any given time.
Right.
Take me